Welcome to the Female VC Lab podcast. I want to thank Milken. I'm here at the 2024 Global Milken Conference, and I have Margot here. Margot, in one line, give me your name, your title, and your area of impact.
Barbara, thank you so much for having me. My name is Margot Brandenburg, and I'm the Senior Program Officer for Mission Investments at the Ford Foundation, and I'm based in New York City.
Wonderful. What inspired you to get involved with the Ford Foundation, and how does one go about doing that?
Thank you for the question. So I've spent pretty much my whole career working in impact investing. So that is this intersection of profit and purpose. It's the investment of capital with an expectation of financial return, as well as a particular set of social or environmental goals. And my role at the Ford Foundation is to think about how we grow impact investing. And my group also deploys some of the foundation's own investment assets into things like affordable housing and gender lens investing that advance our mission and value. And for me, the appeal is really just the magnitude of the problems that we face as a society and as a planet, whether it's climate change, inequality, lack of affordable housing. And philanthropy alone isn't going to be able to solve those problems at scale. And we've seen some really exciting and ambitious funding coming out of government, but even government alone isn't going to be able to address those problems at scale. We really need to tap into the innovation and the capital that lies in the private sector to build the society and the sustainable planet that we all want to live on. That is what draws me to impact investing, and that is why I'm really excited to be at the Ford Foundation.
That's wonderful. How do you think that impact investing is going to advance venture capital or private capital markets, or how will it add to private capital markets?
Yeah, so I've been around impact investing since the term was coined in 2007. Okay. And at the time, none of us knew if the term would ever be picked up or if it would gain traction. And the latest survey that I've seen, which is now almost 2 years old, suggests that impact investing is more than $1 trillion in AUM globally. Wow. This is more than just a fringe idea. It's something that increasingly we see mainstream asset owners and allocators and managers participating in. For the most part, that capital is in the private markets. Right. There's a sense that public markets are more constrained, and that if you really want to invest with intention around impact, that is primarily going to lead you to the private capital markets. In terms of venture capital in particular, I would say we've spent a lot of time in the past year thinking about responsible technology and responsible AI.
Okay. Responsible AI is a very huge topic.
It is a big topic, and there's many more smarter people than myself. But as we evaluate investment opportunities, particularly in the venture space, I think we're forced to ask ourselves what good looks like and how we maximize the benefits and minimize the potential harms. For example, toward the end of last year, we invested in a female-led fund called Ex Ante, which invests in something called agentic tech, or tech that supports human agency by giving users control over their data, fighting disinformation and bias. And the woman who runs that has begun to amass a really interesting, I think, commercially attractive and impactful portfolio of companies that are focusing on user-centered data and privacy concerns in the world of AI.
It's a big problem.
We also recently, alongside a couple of peer foundations, bought shares in Anthropic and are excited to have a seat at that table to explore, again, what's possible, right? How we maximize the opportunity that these technologies have for humanity, and also how we sound the alarm on risks, whether it's disinformation, bias, the economic inequality, if you will, of not compensating data sources. So there's a lot to sort through, and we think we can have an important and hopefully valuable seat at the table as an investor as well as a grant maker.
Wonderful. What are you currently learning or listening to or reading these days?
As we've tried to get smarter about responsible tech and AI, I at least realized early on that many people fall into either the camp of AI doomer and see nothing but potential harm, or a utopianist where AI will solve all of our problems and we shouldn't worry about anything. And Personally, I imagine our reality is likely to fall somewhere in between
middle,
those extremes. And I think we all have a role to play in shaping where on that spectrum we land. But I think it's important to hear from both camps. And
Absolutely.
so I've been really excited to read a book by Dr. Safiya Noble here at UCLA called Algorithms of Oppression, which is about how search engines drive discrimination today and actually over the past 10 years, right? This isn't a hypothetical future risk. This is something that we're dealing with currently and learn from the present in order to inform a better future.
Yes, absolutely.
But I was also really excited to read a book called Intended Consequences by Hemant Tejada from General Catalyst, who I think is an optimist about what's possible and sees an emerging cohort of high growth companies and founders that want to solve problems.
Yes.
And so it's not, I think Hemant would also see the risks and is clear eyed about them, but it's a more kind of optimistic take on what's in front of us.
What's the real opportunity and possibility of it?
Exactly. And so I think it's really important to immerse or at least familiarize myself with perspectives that really cut across a pretty wide spectrum of thought.
Wonderful. In 2 years, when we're talking, this is the bonus question, by the way, Margot. I always give the bonus question.
I love it.
It's not a secret, but it is a bonus. In 2 years, when we're talking, how do you see the Ford Foundation impacting investing and venture and private capital markets?
Gosh, that's such a good question. And I could make multiple prognostications, but fundamentally, we think that consumers and workers and investors and voters want a capitalism that is responsive to the needs of all of its stakeholders, not exclusively its shareholders. And so there's been some contestation around that premise in the United States over the past 2 years.
If you think about who's buying things, though, the reality is these younger generations actually want that more responsible lens in the capitalism area. So it's odd that corporations or private companies are attempting to catch up to that.
Yes. Gosh, there's a whole other segment that we could record on those dynamics. But yes, we think it's very much a generational issue. We see younger generations, not only of wealth holders, but of workers who are graduating college and looking at their employment prospects and choosing to work for companies that have purpose or that share their values.
Yes.
And so there's huge secular shifts that are driving, I think, a more stakeholder-centric approach to the way we run companies and invest capital. And there's also a lot of disclosure requirements coming from jurisdictions across the world that are going to require companies to disclose carbon emissions and board diversity.
They have that here in California already.
Exactly.
We already have that here.
The Europe of the West Coast. I think all of that raises the floor on the capital markets in a way that's really important. But I also think that impact investors have a job to keep raising the ceiling and to say, what more can we do, right? What more is possible? And I do think this space of venture capital and responsible technology is where we're going to see a lot of exciting innovation and thought leadership and model development. And I think it's going to fundamentally expand our shared understanding of how to think about impact. It's not only carbon emissions. It's not only things that have come to be known as standard ESG factors, but there's data and tech architectural questions that are going to need to inform our understanding of what good looks like.
Yes.
And I think it'll make all of us stronger, not only those who invest in venture capital, but those of us that participate across the capital markets.
I 100% agree. How do people contact you?
Oh, thank you. I suppose the best way would be to message me on LinkedIn.
Great. We'll leave that in the show notes.
I would be glad to. It's Margot Brandenburg.
So thank you so much, Margot Brandenburg from the Ford Foundation, for being our